Welcome to Bush Beta, and thanks for joining me. I wanted to make a video showing 2020 versus 2024 kind of side by side. What I did was I took the same plane, the NX Cub, and I took off from the same airport, landed at the same airport using the same graphic settings. This is Graham 48AK that we're taking off from, and we're going to be landing at Victory OAK6. It's one of my favorites. I had to get two airports that weren't add-ons, and that's tough to do when you've been collecting airports and airstrips for several years. Unfortunately, I did get the lighting a little bit different. But one thing the lighting will show on 2024, and you'll notice when I turn in here, look at the plexiglass on the left side. You'll see when the sun hits it, it is amazing. It looks real. There is scratches, there's marks, a haze of plexiglass right there. It makes a huge difference versus the sterile, just almost looks like no glass on the right side. One thing I noticed when I started flying is the level of saturation in 2020 versus 2024. Looks great, but it certainly detracts from what I feel like is immersion and realism. And once you get used to it, it's pretty shocking going back to it. One of the biggest differences visually that I've noticed is the trees, and I think that's a common theme for everybody that's using the beta or the alpha or whatever you want to call it. All the trees look like broccoli in 2020 now that you're used to. Look at that. Just absolutely amazing. Go full screen here so you can see a little bit better, but then in some of the areas I try to put them side by side so you can see them both. So we'll fly down close to the water here so you can get a look at that. Water looks great, very natural. There is some graphic anomalies in 2024, just like 2020. They don't necessarily all show up in the same place, but they're definitely there. You can see them here. Just seems to be the nature of the beast. Hoping the tablet can be removed at some point, or maybe I just haven't figured out how to do it. You can click on the mount or the suction cup that highlights like you'd be able to, but I haven't figured out how to do it. Big difference in the geographic features like the mountains, the hills, the roads. Just for this point, pre-release, for this to be look this good, I think we're in for a lot of fun if you're a flight sim fan in the next few years. I'm really excited about it. Don't get me wrong, 2020, I still think it's one of the best looking pieces of software available, but I just feel like 24 has improved on it, and it's hard to deny. Again, those same graphic like anomalies in the water. And We're all familiar with them. Especially if you fly bush planes and you fly low like this, you're gonna see them. Trees and the shoreline just really looks fantastic. The amount of detail and the fidelity in these cliffs and the trees on the side of the cliffs, you can really tell that they've added to this, and all of this without giving up any performance. Now granted, I'm running a 12th gen Intel and a 4090. This is on ultra settings, pretty much everything, but it is on both titles. So if anything, there is no stuttering and no pauses that I've noticed in 2024. I actually recorded this the first time in 2020 and got a couple of nasty pauses to where I felt like I needed to re-record it. It's something I've battled. I think a lot of us have. I'm really good about keeping my cache tidy, and I do everything I can. I've got a balance between the 4090 and the GPU. I run a little bit lower terrain detail to try to stress the CPU less, and I run, actually this is 4K upscaled to 120 in TAA. It's not DLSS. So that is about as much as you could stress the graphics card, and I'm still averaging 55, 60 frames per second. On both titles, it's really close to being the same. Install was 9 gigs. It installed super quick. It loads super quick. One thing to note, I am running the small trees add-on because there was some bush strips that I went into where the trees were obviously not right in 2020, and I've ran that for a long time, so I've just come to accept that's the way it is, and it definitely helps. I really like it. I recommend it if you're still going to play 2020 or fly 2020. So up ahead we have this like hillside and cliff. The airport is right behind it, so I'll be making a left turn to turn on base for final. And right before you do see that, you're gonna get an opportunity to see the river. And it's I really liked that part of this video because it really shows off a huge difference between 2020 and 2024. That clicking you hear, that's me fiddling with the trim on the NX Cub. I don't fly the NX Cub a lot, but I really struggled with the trim on it. For whatever reason, it does not happen in the new version. It's just less fiddly. It doesn't fight you as much. The flight model is definitely more complicated in 24. Landing much harder. And that's just the flight model. That doesn't count any sort of surface differences or anything like that. It is just feels a little more real. 2020 is good. Don't get me wrong. 24 is that much better, I believe. Not sure what I was doing there. notice that I was talking about the saturation and just the green, and it's like that worldwide no matter where you're at. The trees look the same no matter where you're at. And although you're only seeing Alaska here, these trees are very unique to this area. I flew down in the lower 48, several different areas, and much more fall colors, because these are spruce and evergreens and pines. They are still green in October, whereas Seattle area, Idaho, close to me in the Midwest, it was pretty orange already, and it looks fantastic. One of the biggest downsides that I've come across, not bugs, I haven't seen too many bugs. I've had a couple crashed desktops. It has something to do with when I launch the game, if I'm too zoomed in on the map, it can't do its animation where it zooms down in, and I've had several where I've left it in too far and it's crashed. But the biggest drawback I think so far that I've seen is the controls. You can still set them up just fine, and I'm using my Gladiator NXT that I've got and my Stax throttle, and I've got crosswind rudders. They're all working perfectly, but setting them up is a little unintuitive. I think that's always kind of been a hallmark of the flight sim titles. But it's early, and there's probably room for some improvement, whether they do it by release or through an update later on. So behind this hillside is the airport, but before I get to that, in both versions, I'm going to look down this valley, and you will see a pretty good example of the two titles and how they handle things a little differently. If you'll notice in 2020 right here, there is places, and we've all seen this, where the water creeps up the sides of the hillsides or the mountains or whatever. And I zoom in a little bit so you can see it, and it's down at the bottom. Right there, you can kind of see, the trees are a little underwhelming. Now this is 2024. Look at the same thing. Pretty drastic difference, right? I thought so. And then we're going to cut back to 20 here, and we're on base for final at Victory. Still beautiful. But you will notice that the airport is probably the weak link here. A little jacked up. The textures aren't quite right. Just a little disheveled. Not a real clear marked runway, just kind of a open field. Very green. Maybe too green. I don't fly the NX Cub much, and thought it was going to drop a little faster than it did, so I ended up really setting down late on the runway, and then I panicked a little bit. I had to get on the brakes hard. Flaps up and got it shut down, but it wasn't pretty. Now you see the same thing in 24. Can't get over how big of a difference the of them make. And the airstrip looks totally different. I think you've noticed that in the first one I took off from too. And another bad landing in the same plane. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you got to see some differences between the two titles. I know it's I have, and I've enjoyed the beta, and yeah, hope you learned something. If you liked the video, please hit that like button. Consider subscribing. I'm a new channel, and I'm going to be bringing you more stuff that's related to bush planes and Microsoft Flight Simulator. Thanks.